Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Speak, Film, and Enter, a podcast where we review and rank movies. I'm Nate.
And I'm Dylan.
And today it is Movie Club number 4.
Mm-hmm.
Brand new segment we started at the beginning of 2023, where we just review an old movie once a week. We release it on Fridays, kind of a way to open it up and make some of our reviews maybe more accessible to things that are just available at home. And also, in cases like this, kind of ways to give ourselves a little bit of a kick in the ass and watch some classic movies that we've always been meaning to, but have kind of put off for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, definitely. So today we are talking about The Piano, written and directed by Jane Campion in 1993. It was nominated for 8 Oscars, winning 3 of them. Best Actress for Holly Hunter, Best Supporting Actress for Anna Paquin,
Yes,
and Best Screenplay for Jane Campion herself. So, I mean, I think we can pretty much dive right into this. Just really quickly, though, if you are new to kind of this segment, it is pretty new, so it wouldn't be surprising. We will do kind of a quick review at the beginning with no spoilers and then give our star ratings, and then we'll break into a longer discussion in the second half of the show where we will include spoilers for those of you who have seen the movie if you want to stick around for that. So,
right. And in case people do not know what it's about,
yes,
from 1993, in the mid 19th century, a mute woman is sent to New Zealand along with her young daughter and prized piano for an arranged marriage to a farmer, but is soon lusted after by a farm worker.
Yes.
Gotta watch out for those farm workers.
Those lusty farmers. There's a new reality series, by the way, called I think it's Farmer Wants a Wife.
Farmer Needs a Wife or Farmer Wants a Wife. It's one of those, probably wants.
Something like that. Yeah, will you be tuning in? I
will not.
Pretty confident saying I will not be.
If they sent him to an island in New Zealand, maybe.
Or if the farmers looked like Harvey Keitel
and Sam Neill,
and yeah, that helps.
I mean, I guess where do you want to start with this one?
I guess, what did you know about this going in? I had heard of it mostly because I really like Holly Hunter, and because I think Anna Paquin is the youngest. I could be wrong on that, but the youngest actress ever to win Best Supporting or whatever. I think she might be the youngest person to win an acting award at the Oscars. So I'd heard of it for those reasons, and then it kind of got back on my radar last year because Jane Campion's The Power of the Dog was nominated for about 1 million Oscars and was a movie that we reviewed here and really enjoyed. But I didn't really know much of what it was about other than Holly Hunter plays a woman who does not want to speak.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, that's about as much as I knew. Even maybe less. Like, I totally had no idea that Harvey Keitel was in this when we picked it to do it for the movie club. I mean, I really liked The Power of the Dog, but I haven't seen very many of Jane Campion's other movies. So
I think this is definitely the most highly acclaimed outside of perhaps The Power of the Dog now. I think those two are sort of at least much more widely known than the rest of her movies. I don't think she has a ton that she's directed, but I thought this would be interesting because we have Women Talking coming out this weekend. And so watch a different feminist movie where kind of the main character in a completely different way to look at it is specifically not speaking. For various reasons, I think. I guess, how effective did you find that, and kind of what were your takes on the reasons for her character not speaking? I think that's something we can dive into without really spoiling anything.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, or we could talk about it more in the spoiler section, but I felt like in general, as a device or just like something that makes this movie unique, the main character never seeing her speak, and Holly Hunter just having to basically tell the whole story with either her like eyes or her the way she like plays the piano like to express herself. I thought that was really well done. Like I
Yeah.
really was into that. I can totally see why Holly Hunter won the Oscar for her performance. I mean, like she is just mesmerizing, and her eyes are just like on another level in this. Like seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was all really well done. Or then the third way she communicates, which is through her daughter, played by
Oh
Anna
yeah, and like
Paquin.
sign language and her daughter. Yeah.
I really liked those because she generally communicated through her daughter when she was frustrated
Mm-hmm.
and wanted that frustration voiced.
Yep.
And so you get this really kind of amusing dynamic where Holly Hunter is sort of like aggressively signing something. And then Anna
Mm-hmm.
Paquin just gives it this like 6-year-old sass.
Yeah.
She's like, my mommy doesn't want to do that.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And also when her and her daughter are not on the same page or are opposed, then their communication even gets kind of more interesting because then like the daughter either like doesn't want to translate what she's saying, or like when they're kind of arguing, it's you're only hearing the daughter's like voice side of it, right? Like you're not
Yeah.
really actually, so it made it very interesting. I just felt like that everything about the main character was very interesting, and I felt like this movie is very. I mean, it's a romance drama, and in a lot of ways, it kind of feels like a romance novel, like kind of which and kind of the shows like this have been done forever, and one of the oldest stories, kind of that medieval or not medieval, but like Victorian era. Lords and ladies, and then like, oh, she has to go to an island, and there's a brute and they have a lustful affair, and it's right. That's as old as time. But I felt like because Holly Hunter was the character she was and the way that she performed that just brought like a whole nother dynamic. So it felt fresh, even though it was kind of just your standard like steamy romance novel.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can see why this was so popular and why it was nominated for so many awards because first, like the cinematography is great.
Oh yeah.
It's a costume drama, so you
Mm-hmm.
get all of that added to it, like a period piece, and then you've got a big cast in meaty roles that they can like
Mm-hmm.
really sink their teeth into,
Mm-hmm.
and the music in this movie is spectacular. Like the whole point with Holly Hunter not speaking and then the piano, just you're right, it gives it sort of a unique take
Mm-hmm.
on what is otherwise a similar setting where a woman is, I mean, she's being sold to a man on the other side of the world, basically.
Yeah.
And she's
Yeah.
just got to go over there and that's their life now.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't really get a say. And so I like the element of this movie about a woman trying to define herself through something other than this transactional marriage that has taken place. And
Mm-hmm.
even at the expense of her daughter in some ways, not all the time. I
Yeah.
mean, they're often joined at the hip, but you can
Mm-hmm.
see as the movie progresses, there are times when it sort of becomes things are moving in different directions. If she wants to keep going with the piano, she's got to go this way. But is that direction what's best for her daughter and her relationship with her and for her marriage and all those kinds of things? So
Mm-hmm.
there, it's kind of a slow movie, but there are a lot of wheels spinning at the same
Mm-hmm.
time as far as the main character's choices are concerned. I
Mm-hmm.
think for the most part, that stuff is handled really well. Where I ran into issues with this was basically anything around Harvey Keitel's character. And that is not to say Harvey Keitel's performance, because I
Mm-hmm.
do think he does a good job. But I thought it felt odd to me that a movie that's about kind of, like I said, a woman trying to define herself by something other than a man
Mm-hmm.
ends up just picking a different man. Like there's an aspect here, I'm just purely speaking kind of structurally and thematically to like Beauty and the Beast,
Mm-hmm.
where Belle doesn't want to marry Gaston. And she sings this song about how there must be something better out there.
Yeah.
And then she travels to a castle that's like 5 miles away and falls in love with a guy there. You
Uh-huh.
know, it's like, are you really doing something that's that different than what you are saying and
Mhm.
communicating that you don't want?
Yeah, yeah. No, I get that. I see where you're coming from with that, and also just kind of in general, like the dynamics of their relationship, and like it just
That too.
feels like kind of acceptable and edgy in 1993, but 30 years later, it kind of feels a little a
Well, there's
little
also just
like
the
cringy.
element where this was written and directed by a woman, which I
Yeah.
think is important. I
Hmm.
mean, if this was directed and written by a man, I think this would be like
Universally
just
panned.
instantly kind of trashy and gross,
Yeah.
which tells me that Jane Campion's trying to explore something a little more specific.
Hmm.
But there might be answers right at the beginning of the movie when she says we get kind of a voiceover from like an inner monologue from Holly Hunter
Yeah.
about how she can't even really explain why she doesn't speak. She's like, I don't know. I just don't.
Hmm.
And we could apply that, like, it's desire and love and lust in many ways.
Hmm.
And there are elements of that that don't always you can't always find explanations for. So I tried to kind of apply that logic to the relationship between their characters, but even that for me doesn't quite make up for what I just feel like is I don't know. I don't love the way their relationship plays out. And then
Yeah.
we'll get to the ending
Okay.
in the spoiler section, but that also added to my frustration for that element of the story.
Agreed. Yeah, the ending. The Since I've seen the movie and thought about it more, it just feels like it just isn't. I don't know. Doesn't fit. Didn't stick the landing the way I thought it was gonna. But we can
Right.
get to the stars, and then we'll
Yeah,
talk about that.
I think so. So, just a moment, let me play with our super fancy images here because
Hmm.
Adam is not here to help me. So, I am just
The show is
all over the place.
falling off the rails.
Yeah, for sure. So, we will be right back with our star ratings. Okay.
All right.
I feel like I haven't gone first for a while, so
Yeah, go for it.
just dive right into it. I'm gonna give this movie 3 stars. Um, I was basically at a 2.5 with the way the ending played out, but I did read that that was not Jane Campion's intended ending, and the studio kind of made her change it. So
Okay.
that makes me not drop it quite as much because it sounds like it's not really her fault that the
Yeah.
movie ends the way it does. So, I mean, I think the movie looks great. The performances are fantastic. The music is great.
Hmm.
There's a lot to like here. I just think the way that the story played out with Harvey Keitel's character and then the ending, I found disappointing. So, I don't think it's bad. I think there's a lot worth seeing here, but it didn't quite stick with me the way I wanted it to.
Nice. Yeah. I'm gonna go just a little higher. I'm gonna give it a 3.5. Right when it ended, I actually gave it a 4, but since
I
then, like I
saw
said,
that.
I've been thinking about the ending more, and then I read what you wrote, that it wasn't the original ending, and that does make sense. So that just
Yeah.
drops it a little bit for me. But in the moment, I mean, I was very I was very engaged, and the setting and the performances mostly, it's always it never gets boring. It mostly just the direction that it took in certain scenes, and then specifically the ending, just felt like I don't know. I felt like if this movie had been remade today, they'd be able to keep a lot of the stuff that was working and maybe refine the stuff that wasn't. Probably.
Yeah, I agree. I also think she would have been allowed to keep the ending she wanted, which again, we'll get into that in the spoiler section.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that would have changed my opinion on the movie. It's more that yeah, we'll get into it. But
But yeah, but I still think it's very good. I'm glad I saw it, and I think that, I mean, I can see why it was got all the acclaim it did when it came out, and I can 1,000% see why Holly Hunter deservedly won the Oscar for her performance. She was
also Anna
fantastic.
Paquin, like
And Anna
she
Paquin,
is
oh my, one of the
amazing.
one of her line deliveries about she's like, "Where'd your mom go?" She went to hell.
Yeah, that was
Screaming like,
great.
"Oh my
I should
god!"
also add on just one other element. I
It's
did not
like,
really like the way that the native Maori people were portrayed in this movie. That felt like something that also would have it needs an update.
hmm
If
hmm
somebody like it, I don't know. They were portrayed as very primitive and often just kind of like for laughs, ignorant.
and just very indifferent to
That
like what
didn't
was
really
going
sit well
on.
with me. And they don't even really play a role in the story. They're just kind of there.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't know. I think lots of good things here, but there's just some stuff that didn't sit well with me.
All
So
right.
before we dive into the spoiler section, we do want to
Mhm.
mention next week's movie,
Yep. Movie
which
club
we're
number
finally
5.
going to do it. We are finally going to watch the 3 hour and 20-minute Spike Lee. I've heard masterpiece, can't confirm or deny,
Mhm. Mhm.
but Malcolm X. We're watching for next week. I did not
Yep.
look up where that's streaming. I will do that right now.
Okay.
Those of you who are curious, because of course you are.
Naturally.
If you want to watch Malcolm X, you want to know where it's streaming, and
Mhm.
in that sense, we've got you covered. Really quickly, probably not anywhere. Yeah, it's rentable. That's
Okay,
it,
there you go.
which is fine.
That's Yep.
I was hoping it was going to be on like HBO Max or something, but it's not.
Mhm.
Although it's possible this is the end of January. A lot of
It might
times
get
things get
released somewhere.
updated at like on the 1st of the month, so it's possible it might show up somewhere
Mhm.
in, on February 1st. But yeah, that was our spoiler-free discussion of the
Mhm.
piano, and now we can dive into spoilers. And I think just specifically starting with the ending makes
Yeah.
sense because it is. I would think. I don't know if I want to call it like controversial so much. I think her intended ending would have been controversial, but I can see
Mhm.
this being polarizing, especially just reading some reviews on like Letterboxd and stuff after it and thinking, I don't know how I
So
felt about that ending. There were a lot of discussions that I saw where people said they thought it was great, and other people who just think
it
I am
feels
of the
safe.
opinion. What was that?
To me, it feels very safe. I mean, just a refresher in case you've seen the movie, but it's been a long time or something. It's basically a happy ending. I mean, for like her and Harvey and the daughter, like she lets go of the piano, but she lives, and then they're like living together happily, and there's a loving kiss, and that's like the
And she's
movie.
got a new finger.
Yeah, yeah, and she's got a new finger that he made for her.
Right. I think so. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that the ending was supposed to die with her committing suicide and just being at the bottom of the ocean with the piano.
With the piano.
And one thing that happened, look, movies, like different drafts of scripts, they run through all kinds of endings until you land on the one that you think works best.
Mhm.
And in this case, Jane Campion, I believe, landed on what she thought worked best, which was rather than going with a different man,
Yep. Mhm.
just going down literally with her piano. And the studio didn't like that. And I believe this was a Harvey Weinstein produced movie, which, you know,
Okay.
um,
Mhm.
yeah. Um, and so that felt like literally tacked on. Like they just threw it at the end, shot this little scene, and then didn't change anything else. And the problem with that is that I think all the relationships with the characters and all the decisions that her character makes and the arc that Jane Campion has Holly Hunter's character going through all leads to the story working and clicking if she kills herself at the end of the movie.
Yes. Yeah.
It renders a lot of what happened before it almost like meaningless,
Mhm.
or it, or at the very least really loses a lot of its power
Yeah.
by having her just pick a different guy. Like that's really what happens at the end of this movie is like we go through all of this
Mhm.
and all she does at the end of it is pick a different guy to
Yeah.
be a wife to. And especially given the kind of gross way that their relationship, the transactional
Mhm.
manner in which they're spending all this time together, it, like, affirms that as being, like, romantic and acceptable, and I really, really don't like it just
Yeah.
the more I talk about it.
Yeah, and also it's like it just felt out of place because like when they, it's all working when like the piano is it's rocking back on the boat and you're like, oh, okay, like it's gonna have to go. There's no way, right? And then genius idea for her to be like, no, let it go. And then she at the last second like puts her ankle in the rope, so it like that was I'm like, yes. I'm like,
Did
oh,
that
like that
surprise you,
was
by the way?
a little bit like
'Cause
mostly the
I was
rope
pretty prou
thing.
I was pretty proud of myself where she mentioned that, and I was just like, "Oh, man, this would be, like, a perfect way to kill yourself if you just, like, attached yourself to the piano." And then it started going over, we see the rope with her foot, and I was just like, "Oh, they're doing it."
Yeah.
And then I guarantee this is why it was changed, is she has a daughter.
Yeah, and
Like, as
it's
she was going down, even, like, the thought process I went through while watching that scene, she says, "Throw it overboard," and I thought she could kill herself this way if she just attaches herself to it. She does. I was kinda surprised and, like, good for you, movie, for
yeah.
kinda going this route, this
Mhm.
bold ending,
Mhm.
and then as she was sinking, I thought, "Oh, shit. She's just abandoning her kid."
Yeah.
And that is why I think the ending was changed.
Mm.
I think they didn't want audiences leaving this in the theater.
With an ill impression of her as a mother.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
I think that makes sense because it just because yeah, like for one, Jane still uses that image of her tied up to the piano underneath at the end as the last shot, so you can tell she was committed. She's like, I want
yes.
that to be the last shot, but they just forced her to be like, oh well, it's a happy ending, and then she's just thinking about this other version where she didn't. But it just felt so out of place when she's going down and then she kicks the rope loose. It just felt like of everything in the whole movie that just didn't fit. Like this isn't the type of movie where someone kicks the rope loose in that situation. Like,
Right, and I saw for some people who like this ending, they felt
hmm
very moved by the fact that as she was sinking, she suddenly found a reason to live.
hmm
But for me, there's nothing that happened between like, I found it unbelievable.
yeah,
Like, I mean, I think they made it like, Jane Campion kinda made it work as well as she possibly could
hmm
with this, like, you can look at this in a way of somebody who does wanna commit suicide and then gets right to the brink and realizes they wanna live,
hmm
which is a way you can definitely go with your story, but I don't think that was set up properly because that's not the way it was supposed to go.
mm,
So, it's just kind of a realization that she has that I just don't really buy in that
yeah,
moment.
yeah. I'm with you there. Felt
But I mean, shit, if you watch this and you found that deeply moving,
I'm
I'm
not
not
gonna hate
judging
on it.
anybody for that. That's just it didn't work for me.
hmm hmm Yeah, that's fair. I mean, were there other things that you wanted to mention that I really liked or not liked, but I was the finger getting cut off was very bold, and I did not quite see that coming, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I didn't, but that fit for
That
sure.
totally fit. Totally fit.
Yeah, I mean, just this whole idea of, like, even her one passion in this world is now owned by men, and she can
Mhm.
only access it in, like, transactional, kinda gross ways,
Mhm.
and she reaches a point where she's kind of become I don't wanna say, like, okay with it, but she's trying to make the best of it,
Yep.
and that's just not acceptable. And then
Mhm.
you just also run into the whole thing of, like, men would just rather neither of us get her than
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah. Also, like, one of the all-time, kids, child characters, like, making a decision that you as the audience are like, "Oh, no." Like, "Oh, like, what a
Yeah.
snitch." Like, "You snitching on mom now, Flora?" Like, "Oh." like, but it's understandable because kids do make mistakes and have lapses in judgment like that. And like, I think that was just a very interesting element, that it was like Flora that gave it away, and then like she's just like standing there like screaming as Sam Neill cuts her mom's finger off. It's like, oh my god, what a traumatic, what a traumatic thing for like a 6-year-old. Like,
For sure. I
you
mean,
just like, that
she
was
goes
just
through
wow.
she goes through a lot of stuff. I mean, she's kinda
Hmm.
her mom, like, rightfully, but she doesn't tell her why, keeps her outside during the piano lessons,
Yep.
and she grows frustrated with that.
Hmm.
And then, I mean, she also just kinda wants to have a regular life, and she's not
Yeah.
old enough yet to where her relationships with these men are they're not transactional yet, the
Yeah.
way that her mom's is. She doesn't get it, and it's not her
Hmm.
fault. Like you said, she's 6 years old,
Hmm.
but you can understand for a six-year-old, like, why she's become frustrated with her mom. And
Yeah.
also just it's gotta be frustrating that her mom doesn't talk to her.
Oh
I
yeah, for
mean, they
sure.
look fine and they communicate with sign language, but there's gotta be a part of her that just thinks, like, "You can't even talk to me?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I can see a lot of areas where, her daughter would be frustrated with her, and I think that's completely consistent with a sort of impulse decision made in anger and frustration that a child would make.
Hmm. I thought it was interesting too that, at the beginning she's like, I'm not gonna call this guy my dad. I'm not gonna call him
Yeah,
my dad. But then by the end of the movie, she's warming up to him a lot and like seeks his approval and wants to. And maybe like to your point, it's because like he just the fact that he talks to her makes him an intriguing adult that she would want to like
yeah.
befriend. Because like she's not getting that from her mom or any adult, figure in her life. Um, so yeah, I mean, I just thought that was fascinating. And then Harvey Keitel with quite a very different performance than like anything I've ever seen him in.
Yeah, I can say I'd never seen him do Full Frontal before. That's
No,
for sure.
and that accent was very interesting. Took me a while
Yeah,
to come around to it, but I mean, I think he did his thing. Um,
yeah, for sure. I mean, I like I said, I thought he was good,
mhm.
but his character kind of represents a lot of what I think is wrong with this
Yeah.
movie. So it's hard for me to like fully warm up to the performance when
Hmm.
over halfway through and I kind of picked up on where it was going. I was just like, well, this is just not right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And then I guess that, yeah, you already mentioned that, Harvey Keitel does like Full Frontal. I mean, just in general, this is a very kind of nudity heavy movie. I mean, this is definitely like going for that R rating. I mean, the scene with her and Sam Neill later when she's kind of like just like having him like get naked and she's just kind of like touching him and like it's like okay, Jane Campion, like I definitely see the connection here with Power of the Dog and kind of the way that she likes to have the different elements kind of mix and like her kind of, I don't know, the way that she portrays like sexuality and like as a theme and as a plot device. Like I can see it. It makes me want to watch more of her stuff.
yeah, definitely kind of the way she explores the like sexual dynamics between men and women and sort of
Yes.
what's deemed acceptable.
And also like what just happens like in the privacy of the bedroom that maybe
And
outside isn't deemed acceptable, but inside it's
that
like,
looks at
oh, sometimes people
desire
just
as
go with
well.
it.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. That definitely kind of the movie looks at desire a lot, and
Hmm.
I just wish and maybe it is there, and I saw this yesterday, maybe I just need to think about it a little bit more, but it didn't feel like it had much to say about desire beyond we can't really explain it,
Yeah.
which only works to a certain extent for me.
Hmm. Hmm. I think that's fair. And then last thing, and this is, I guess, a spoiler on myself, but what happened to Sam Neill's character at the end? Because the last scene I remember us seeing him in is he's confronting Keitel's character and is like, "Has she ever spoken to you?" And he's got the gun, and he's like, "No, he never spoke to me, or she's never spoken to me." And then it doesn't just cut to Keitel and her like packing up to leave. Like, what happened with Sam Neill's character? Does he kill himself? What
No,
did I
I
miss
think he
something?
just he just lets her leave with Harvey Keitel.
Okay. But there's
He
not a
just
scene where we see him do that. It's
I
just
think
like
he
implied
I
that he
think he
just
kinda
gave up.
says it somewhere in there, like, "I just want her to feel" I don't know what I can't remember exactly, but I didn't feel surprised when that happened. I felt like
Okay.
he said something, I can't remember what it is, but there was a moment where he says something, whether it's very deliberate or a little more, like, hidden meaning or, like, implying or
Okay.
something, but he
I
kinda
must have
says
just
something where,
looked
like,
away for a
"She's going with
second.
you, you're all getting out of here, and I'm
Okay.
fine with that at this point."
Okay, because I guess, like, I picked up on, like, okay, I think that's what's happening, but I
Yeah.
didn't know if I'd either missed a scene or I kept expecting one shot to go back to Sam Neill, like, sitting there alone being like, "This was the right thing to do," or I don't know. But I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I guess we just don't see him anymore." And he was holding a gun last time we saw him, so I don't know.
that's fair.
Like
Last thing I wanted to say is when they pulled her out of the water and back into the boat at the end, Harvey Keitel is as dry as can be. He did not jump into the water.
No.
He is no Leonardo DiCaprio.
No, he definitely did not. He
He's
was
just
like, "Oh,
sat there.
natives, you jump in and get her."
Yeah, like, come on.
Oh, yeah, I did
Imagine Harvey
notice that.
Keitel just being like, "I'm not getting wet."
Yeah, right, or he's just like, I'm a horrible swimmer. I'm not getting in there."
Yeah,
Like, nope.
something like that because yeah, that it's
Yeah.
like, "Come on, man."
Um, and that is interesting leads to another thing I read in one of the reviews that he, originally in the script, he doesn't go down on her, but Keitel insisted that it's something that his character would do. So
That was a weird scene
that was
where specifically the part where Sam Neill is watching and then the dog licks his hand.
his hand. I know.
Yeah, that I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay,
Oh, I know, that was some weird
it
that
was
was
just such a weird choice for, like, a suggestive thing." Like, I don't know, it was odd, and I just
yeah.
felt like we
It
don't
felt like I could feel that dog, like, like, it was such
yeah,
a very, like, unique sensation that everybody knows, and I know what you mean. In that moment, I was like, "Oh god, Jane." Um,
yeah, I was just like, "Oh, that's just gross."
that's um, but, also, I came across an article that the piano it was a prop, but the piano that is on the beach that was on the beach in the movie, sold at auction, and it only sold for, like, $1,000 New Zealand dollars, which is, like, 495 euros. Like, you coulda
What?
had that in your apartment, dude. We
That's how
we coulda
much, like,
we coulda gone half and
pianos
half and
cost.
had the piano from the piano.
That's just how much pianos cost, I think, too. Like, it's not like it was a really famous pencil that
No,
went
yeah.
for only $1,000. Like, pianos aren't cheap.
Mhm. And even if it's a prop, I mean, I don't know, it still has
Yeah,
notoriety. I was just surprised, yeah.
that is
That's
surprising. I feel like that should have gone for significantly more money.
yeah. Like, this is the one that Harvey Keitel cleaned naked very sensually.
Whoever buys it, just a picture of Harvey Keitel right above the piano.
Oh, good stuff. Alright, was there anything else you wanted to get to, or is that pretty much it?
I think that was it.
Yeah, no, interesting, it's our first movie club, pick that we didn't completely love, or at least, like,
Which
really, really like, which
we've
is
talked about
okay.
this before in other ways where, like, when you watch too many movies in a row that you think are amazing,
Mhm.
you start to question, like, "Am I just giving everything 4.5s and 5s that doesn't deserve it?"
Yep,
And so it almost makes me feel better when I watch something that's also supposed to be to that level,
but it
and then
doesn't
I'm just kinda
work
like, "Oh,
for
it
you.
was it was pretty good."
Yeah, yeah,
It's
I
it's got some
agreed.
flaws.
Mhm. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, then I believe it is my turn to put a wrap on the show. Just one more reminder: next week's movie club pick is Malcolm X, which can be rented wherever movies are rented, and then yeah, I am going to put a wrap on the show right now.
Take it away.
I'm quite the town freak, which satisfies.